There's no question in my mind, and I think they'll agree with me after this is over. Student teaching is the cornerstone, the most important piece of our program. That really cements what we've been working on all these years in students' minds, and it makes a huge impact on them. So we do appreciate it, and I can assure you this, you're a critical piece in the experience that our students will have. So we did have some orientation this summer. Of course, you guys, now that you know you're going to have a student teacher, it's a good time just to review. We'll do it pretty quickly. I'm going to just point out the highlights, get the painful part over quickly, I hope, and just go through some of what I think are the most important pieces of the handbook. And hopefully everybody has a handbook now. Is that true? Have a handbook? We'll look through it. Well, if you have an older one, it's not identical to the one we've had. It does undergo revisions. We're going to try to make revisions each year, so it's a good idea to keep up to date, and that's another reason we do the orientation. Because some policies do get tweaked a little bit, just depending on things changing in the school divisions and in our program. So it's worthwhile to come in and just get the latest spiel. And in fact, we're recording this spiel so that the mentors who aren't here will get to review my review on Moodle, our learning management system, in the video. So, thank you, Shannon. All right, so I want to refer you to page 5 and let the student teachers know some of the expectations I think are most critical while you're here and can witness it. Of course, it's here as a record anyway, but I'll just review the main ones, at least as far as I'm concerned. I want to point you to number 1, which says, under the title, the subtitle there, to be a respectful guest in your school, we would like our student teachers to be a part of the regular faculty. We want them to follow all the school policies, all the standards of behavior, the written and unwritten rules. And here's a critical line here. We want them to keep the same work hours that you are expected to keep. Attend the meetings the same as you do. There is a place for them to document extra meetings in the handbook on Form C. Okay, I want to skip down to number 3. We think student teachers need to defer completely to your judgment. You, after all, have the ultimate responsibility for the classroom. And we want to make sure, number 4, that the mentor reads and approves any written communication that the student teacher wants to send to students or parents. I think that's pretty important. If they send something out that causes a little bit of a stir, you, the mentor, could still be responsible. So please check those communications and make sure they're appropriate. We want our students to cultivate their teaching skills. So number 5 and 6 I think are really important. We want them to have a classroom management plan that they share with you, and in fact I'm hoping they have theirs today to share with you. You guys remember to bring that? If not, you'll have to kind of conjure it up, because we'll do that at the end. Number 6, we want our student teachers to prepare lesson plans, and we don't think they should be able to teach a lesson unless they can produce a lesson plan for that day. And we'd like you to work with them to make sure that they make sense to you and they meet the SOLs and all that. So I'm going to skip on down to page 6, number 11. This is another category. It's really important that the student teachers establish and maintain professional distance with their students. So we suggest that they dress professionally, and they probably come in on Tuesday a little updressed, and then figure out what the standard at your school is, and then try to meet that standard, whatever that is. And number 15, I think is another really important policy, that our students need to follow your division's policies as far as corresponding with students in any way. You know, whether that's email or any kind of social networking. It's sort of like the written communication. If students write something, if our student teachers write something to your students, that needs to be through sort of approved channels for your school and school division. Skipping on down to fully engage with the responsibilities of the profession, number 18, I'd like to point out, we want our students to accept responsibilities at your school. We want them to, do bus duty, do cafeteria duty, whatever is in line with what you're asked to do. We'd like them to accept if they're asked to do those things too. Number 19, this we could use your help with, mentors. I would really like them to meet the principal, and have a chance to conference with that person at your school. Number 20, skip on down to that. We want you, student teachers, to share your updated teaching schedule, management plan, and all your lesson plans with your supervisor. Now, it's worth it to talk to them. I notice none of them are actually here right now, but it's worth to talk to them to make sure that you all are on the same page in terms of how you're sharing that. I've provided a spot on Moodle on the 441 course, not the same as the 450 now. We've started a new one, where you can post your lesson plans, your updated schedule, and your reflections, okay? And I'm going to convey to them, maybe through this video right here, convey to them that that's there, and it's just a Dropbox on Moodle, and it's a place they can check themselves and review those lesson plans, make sure your hours look right. Mentors can have a role in that, I guess, but that's primarily a way for us to keep account of that stuff. That is also the place to post your discussion forum, reflections. So all the student teachers are asked to do 2 reflections each week, just by the end of the week. I've usually said by Sunday, so they have the weekend to kind of let things settle a little bit. And those get posted, just like a discussion forum, to the group of student teachers and supervisors in this case. And the supervisors tend to try to not contribute too much because that's mostly a peer kind of sharing. But they should be looking at those, and if they need to, comment, they probably will. But we've been doing that a couple years, and actually it's pretty useful for the student teachers. You get into the semester and some things come up, and you want to not really post a grievance, but post a problem maybe that you're having, and you get some good ideas from some of your peers. So I think that's worked out really well. And then number 25. We want our student teachers to be consistently on time or early. Let's face it, you guys can all testify. Schools are fairly rigid in terms of their schedules. The kids get there. We're not starting to take responsibility for kids. That's not something to take lightly. So we do ask mentors to let us know very quickly if there's any kind of pattern. And by pattern, I pretty much mean a second time. Like one time you can kind of understand, something happened unexpected, but if it happens a second time, please just let us know because we really want our students on time or early. It does go on to say, you guys can talk and say, well, what's the best way to communicate if I'm sick and I can't come in? I would think you'd want to make sure you got the message, so I would prefer to call, but you could decide between you how to convey that. If you can share your cell phone number, that might be the most immediate way to find out, mentors, that something is up with the student teacher. I told the student teachers already that when they go to the germ factory, the school, for the first couple of weeks, they will probably get infected, probably come down with something after 3 or 4 weeks. It's very common. So, yeah, we understand that, but we need to make sure that the student teacher is calling you first, letting you know, and then also emailing us to tell us that they've had to miss due to illness. Okay, so I think those are the main expectations of student teachers I wanted to convey. Anybody got any question about any of those? That is to the mentor teacher, which starts on page 10. I'm going to skip to the highlights again. Pick up with about page 12. Let's skip to the highlights on page 12. Well, that first item there says, we would like you, mentor teachers, to help a student teacher to talk about teaching and learning in order to promote introspection, inquiry, and reflection. So one role you can play is really as a sounding board. So these guys are learning. It's a little bit hard to remember how overwhelming it can be stepping into this role as a teacher. I can kind of vaguely remember. I think I told these guys for Every morning, probably for about 2 weeks, I was waking up at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, just with thoughts buzzing in my head and all the. It wasn't anxiety; it was more excitement and just a lot of energy to figure that stuff out. And so it's a great time to reflect and think about things that are working and not working, and you're really the best resource being in the classroom to help students process this. So if you could schedule a time, when you're available to meet and just talk things through, that would be very helpful. We hope that you can accept the student teacher as a professional partner. Someone to make plans with, look at student work with, and talk about, on sort of this similar level. Of course, you're a lot more experienced, but the more you can kind of think of them as a colleague, a developing colleague, I think the better for them. And maybe for you too. I've heard a lot of cases where the mentor teacher feels like they benefited from having a student teacher just because of the new ideas and that energy of a young person just coming out of school. So I think you are colleagues. So hopefully you can develop that relationship. And I'm going to skip on down to where it says to help the student teacher become acquainted with the rules, regulations, policies, curricula, and facilities. Some of those, as I mentioned earlier, are kind of unwritten. So the more you can kind of help the student teacher see the culture of the school and to try to fit in, I think the better. Skipping on down again below this list, third from last item there. Do please check the daily lesson plans. Just make sure that they're making sense, that they're on target. Co-planning is fine. Co-teaching is fine. We do like our student teachers to feel kind of the responsibility of being the lead teacher for the majority of the semester after they kind of have ramped up, to maybe one class at a time being added. But that does not mean that it's time just to sort of leave the room and go to the workroom or sit in the back of the room and never say anything. It's really still an active partnership that you have with your student teacher. And so co-planning, even sometimes having group work where you split up and take different parts of the classroom is fine. And that can still count completely as instructional time for our student teachers. So there's not a hard and fast rule that student teachers sort of take over and the mentor teacher backs off completely. Although I do want to emphasize that it is important sort of developmentally for our students to at some point take responsibility, primary responsibility, and for the students to look at them as the teacher. I'm sure those of you who have had student teachers know that that transition can be a little difficult because students keep asking you questions. Can I go to the bathroom? I'll come and ask you, or can I do this? And of course we want at some point for the students to know, or at least perceive, the students in your class to perceive that now the student teacher is in charge. And that's helpful sort of developmentally as a teacher to feel that responsibility. And then this last, or second to last item is to evaluate the student teacher's performance. And those guidelines have changed a little bit, and there is a whole section here on guidelines for evaluating the student teachers. Now what happens is you get an email with a link on it at the appropriate times. And sort of depending on the placement, if the student teacher has 2 placements, you'll get that 2 times, one at the beginning and one at the end. If they're just with you, you'll get it 3 times, one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. But you'll get it automatically, and you can just click the link, fill it out, and hit submit, and it'll come to us electronically. It makes it a little easier to track all that. As I say, there are sort of detailed instructions. I guess what I would say in general is to go ahead and, well, of course we want you to always be honest, but make sure that first one provides constructive information so the student knows what to pay attention to and what you're expecting, and go over it with them. And that's fine. We don't use that for grading or anything, that first one. The last one, we do use for evaluation. So that's the one you really want to, treat the student teacher as a novice teacher and assess them appropriately to that. And that's like I say, a serious assessment that we look at. We do assign the final grade, but we use your feedback, both that you could give us orally and what you say in that assessment, to come up with that final final grade. And really, there's several things that they do, but I'm going to focus on two that I've highlighted here on page 13. They will be coming by. Sometimes it's as often as once a week toward the beginning. It may taper off some after that. Some will maybe continue to come out once a week. When they come out, it may be an informal kind of drop-in, but 4 to 6 times at least they're supposed to go ahead and conduct a observation where they'll keep notes and then provide feedback back to the student teacher. This is meant really to be entirely constructive. We're just trying to be helpful and offer something to improve on and some positive feedback as well. In no way are they evaluating the school or the mentor teacher. It really should be seen as a supportive resource. Certainly if you wanted to grab them and talk, that's a great time when they're popping in, or you can make an appointment and say, can you come out? And that is perfectly appropriate too. And then the final thing is that, well, as I already mentioned, we will evaluate the student teachers after consulting with you. And sort of the actual logistics of that, each supervisor may have their own way of doing that. They may come out to the school and schedule a meeting with you. They may just email. It just depends on the particular supervisor. So any question about the supervisor's role? Okay. So let me just point out on page 14, especially you student teachers, this is where it says about the online notebook that I was talking about that we expect you to keep. And we'll ask the supervisors to check there unless you all make different arrangements. A lot of the supervisors prefer having a printout, at least on the days that they come out to observe. I think I mentioned that. So it's probably appropriate, unless you hear otherwise from your supervisor, to go ahead and print out lesson plans if you know that they're coming. I mean, you may keep yours, I'm saying print out because you may keep yours on a computer normally, and that's where I would like them posted online. Unless you and your particular supervisor decide you want to just keep a hard notebook, and that's what they're going to use to look at. It's sort of between you guys. Okay? So there are paper forms here. Pretty much all these paper forms are also available online. And things like your daily schedule, which is on page 16, is online. You can get an electronic version of that. Page 17, your record of teaching, observation, and participation hours. You do need to keep your hours. If you want to write them out on this paper, that is more than fine. There's an electronic version, which I would like you to keep up to date also. Or you could just keep it electronically. That way your supervisor can make sure that the hours are adding up correctly. You do have to total 300 hours at the school. And usually we get more than that because Emory-Henry requires 62 days. Is that what we decided? I think it was 62 days. And so if you multiply 62 times the typical number of hours that teachers are engaged each day, usually that more than covers it. It's 180 hours of instructional time, and that's listed in here, and 120 hours of observation. I would make this note: if the student teacher starts teaching very quickly, and they're not actually just sitting there observing, so they're counting all these teaching hours, and I've had student teachers at the end say, well, I don't have enough observation hours. Well, it's no problem to convert teaching hours into observation hours. It doesn't work the other way, but you can have an excess of teaching hours, and that's fine. And that can make up for any lack of observation hours. Okay, so that's the hours. Any question about those forms? About keeping up with that stuff? Okay, page 22, Form E, is just showing you what the online form looks like when you get that evaluation. So you sort of know the categories there. As I said, you'll end up getting that on your email, so you don't really need to fill that out. And the forms behind that, there's a couple there for the supervisor that you don't need to worry about. Okay. So any question about any of that? Appreciate your patience. I know it's a little tedious, but hopefully that'll get us all on the same page. One thing I have not mentioned yet, should mention this for mentors. This is new this year, so even if you've mentored a lot before. Maybe you got this email. Did you get the email about the Moodle support group? The mentor support group. That is new this semester. I got everybody added to that I know of that's mentoring. And that is just going to work as a support system. If you have any issue or any question, you can post it to that discussion. I'm going to put a little discussion form on there. Everybody will get it, and then anybody can chime in. The supervisors will be enrolled in that. I'll be enrolled in that, so you can get a response from us or from each other. The student teachers are not enrolled in that. This is just for the mentors and supervisors. Okay? So that was worth it. Any question about that? Okay, so I'd like for the, at least if you have your mentor here, like student teachers to get together with their mentors and share their management plan. If you don't, hopefully you have a printout or you can dig it up real quick. If you can't, you can just conjure it from your mind, recall, because we've been working on that. I would point out that clearly, the student teacher stepping into your room, and you may need to reconcile their thoughts about this with the school policies or your policies that you're hard and fast on. And it's perfectly fine for them to adjust what they have in mind. I just wanted them to be thinking about things that may be important to them, our students, when they take leadership of the class. So you all can just talk about that and then be prepared to report back sort of the whole group here in a little bit. Any little tweaks you think are important, or how this is going to work, this transition. It's really between you guys. We trust the mentors, to figure out how the student teacher should take over the class and give them feedback on all that. I just wanted to give them a chance to think ahead and sort of anticipate what might be some issues in the classroom. So that's why they created that. I do like, even if they end up using your same rules, like you said, well, these are really the rules I want to keep consistent in my classroom, which would be perfectly fine. I do like the students, when they take primary responsibility for the class, to sort of own that for themselves, to say to their students, to say to your own students, I'm going to be teaching this class for the next few weeks or several weeks, and I'm going to be using the same rules, and here they are. I think that's worth doing, right? So either way, even if you decide you're just going to go with your rules, I want the student teacher to know those really well and to take ownership of those before they take lead responsibility for your class.